Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar, where we're joined by a team from BlackRock to give us an insight into asset management. Just a couple of words about myself. My name is Lisa Jones. I'm one of the career consultants here at the Officers Association. I myself worked in financial services for a number of years after I left the Army, and now, as I said, I'm a career consultant here at the Officers Association. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to the BlackRock team, who will give some financial service.
Hi, thanks Lisa. Thanks everyone for joining us this evening. Just to let you know, we've got 8 of us in the room here in London, and we've got Stuart up in the room in Edinburgh. So as we're going through, I'll give an insight into myself, my background, as well as a couple of the other team, and then we'll give a little overview of BlackRock and a little bit of an insight and a flavour as to what the firm is and what it stands for, and what you can expect on the Insight Day, and also the opportunity to ask some questions regarding the intern program, and it'll be running in 2018. As I'm sure many of you know, we've had 3 for the last 3 intern programs for the last year, and in the room here there are a number of folks from each of those intern programs, so they'll be able to give you a good insight as to how that's gone, what to expect, and any other questions you might want answering. So without further ado, a little bit about me, which is the easy topic. I served in the Royal Logistic Corps. I left the Army in 2012. I'd had a lot of fun doing a whole range of different things, mainly in with a fuels background, and yeah, a lot of time in Germany, a lot of time overseas, and generally enjoyed myself. And then decided that I was leaving the Army. Arrived at BlackRock in the city in October 2012. So literally left and arrived here 2 weeks later. And as it said on the slide there, I worked for the COO team in legal and compliance. What that gave me was a real insight into the firm and how it hung together, and allowed me to navigate the firm and work out really what I wanted to do next. Having done that, I then moved across into the client solutions business, and I work with the pension funds teams and the institutional clients there, and we look at effectively how do we hedge for our pension funds, how do we protect them from moves in interest rates and inflation, and how do we stop those funding levels growing, and really giving them the opportunity to maximize the growth engines that they might have. So it's been a few years of transitioning and moving, and I feel like I've transitioned now across. I know others will have various views as to how long it's taken them or not taken them, etc., and where they are on that road path. But that's a little bit of my own background. So moved in from logistics and now working into a derivatives and pension fund background. So a little bit of an oversight as to the firm itself, the types of opportunities that ex-forces people have come into, and also we'll do a couple of case studies and look at next steps and opportunities. Mostly really the opportunity for Q&A, and also for you guys to send through messages on the screens as we're going through. So who's BlackRock? Without much Googling, you can pretty much find out reasonably quickly that as far as AUM goes, so assets under management, BlackRock's the #1 in the world. It's come together fairly inorganically over time. So what that's meant, there's a number of layers to that when we talk about culture of BlackRock and where BlackRock's come from. And the next slide really pulls that out, this sort of long journey where effectively, as far as culture goes, you've got a firm that started on the sort of as its home back in England in sort of Waldberg and banking days. Waldberg then became Mercury, and Mercury was then swallowed up by Merrill Lynch, the bank. Then on the other side, you have Barclays, Barclays rolling into its own investment management arm. And then 2006, 2009, 2 fairly big mergers that BlackRock did, which took in the investment management arm of Merrill Lynch, and also the investment management arm of Barclays, which was BGI. That's fundamental to where BlackRock as a firm is today. Culturally, you've got a very sort of traditional British investment management, equity active business. And then you have the huge passive business that came with BGI, and the Merrill's investment piece again was that active piece that had taken up Mercury. What that means as well is you've got sort of a East Coast and West Coast US cultures coming together with a British culture, and that over time makes for a pretty decent place for working and a really good set of values. Again, looking at sort of the type of clients we look after, the money that we're running, which is all on a little bit of an insight that is the next slide. So retail investors, institutions such as pension funds, insurers, and the huge sovereign wealth funds, be it out in the Nordics or be it across in the Gulf states, and also charities. So our scope and our range of clients and the institutions that we're delivering results for is pretty massive. What that tells me is that it's a really interesting place to work. It's an interesting place really to learn. It's an interesting place to initially certainly cut your teeth in the investment management world, and really it's an education, it's a grounding, and I think that's what these things point to. As far as scale goes, on the next couple of slides, I'll pass over to colleague Gary Clark, who'll be able to give a little bit of an insight. But again, from there you can just see the huge scale, that of money that we're managing there at $5.7 trillion, and where it compares to some of the GDP. And I think you can then think around some of the risks and how we manage those.
Yeah, hello everybody. I work in the Aladdin product group, which is the technology part of BlackRock. And the reason we go through this little bit of scope is that Aladdin, which is our platform, manages these assets that you can see on the screen there. So one of the things that I wanted to draw your attention to really is when I was putting these slides together for somebody else, I had $5 trillion assets under management, and it had increased to 5.6 when I was doing it. And the person that I was sharing it with said, "You've missed off the 0.6." And I thought, well, 0.6. And he said, "What, $600 billion between friends?" So that's the kind of scale that you're talking here. In terms of our platform, Aladdin, I'll talk to you a little bit about that in a second. Globally, our platform manages more than $20 trillion of assets, which is bigger than 7 of the 8 GDP countries that you got there, 18.1 trillion, and bigger than the US. So the platform globally, so people that actually use our platform Aladdin, manage a huge amount of money. So Aladdin product group, then, what's our mission? We build the most transformational financial technology in the world. And the aim of this company by 2020 is to have 30% of revenue from technology. So that's what Larry Fink wants to get from this business. So you can see we are not just a financial company, we're a technology company. The Aladdin product group designs, builds, and runs Aladdin. And if you look at the scale, you can see here some of the financial and technological things that go on within the business. So, for example, and these figures are all daily. So, 12 million financial transactions a day, 19 billion messages across our message bus every day, 25 million lines of code within the Aladdin product, 6 billion database transactions. We've got over 1,500 developers in Aladdin product group, and we compete with Google and Facebook to get the talent that we need to be able to make sure that the platform that we've built from scratch is best in class.
So a little bit there, kind of building on the culture and the piece there that Gary talked to, and I mentioned earlier about these sort of coming together of different cultures. It's also now the coming together of Silicon Valley, if you like, meets Wall Street. It's this East Coast and West Coast. It's the British history as well. So it really makes for a hugely diverse background across the company. Be it every team, be it wherever you're working, whatever project you're working on. Diversity and inclusivity is something that is a huge driver here at BlackRock. And small pieces, be it going down from one floor to another, or intra-floor, people will be in jeans and t-shirts, some people will be in suits, and it's all about having a grown-up approach and being able to just be yourself at work and be an adult about what you're doing, which I think is something that we all, as ex-military, appreciate. You don't feel stifled. There's no sense that you've got to do X, Y, and Z. It's all about the context in which you find yourself, and that's really quite a refreshing piece to find in the city. And and as Gary's alluding to there, when you're pulling in and you're competing with big tech firms for programmers, etc., it just adds to the energy of the place. So that's something really wanted to draw out. On the screen there's the principles, and I have to say, before I left the army, and we talked about values and standards, and we were doing our maths training, and it was every year, and you kind of just got used to doing it. And then you'd go around and you'd go and see the different firms, and everyone would have, you've got to know the principles, you've got to know what a firm stands for, you've got to know what the big key behaviors are, and you go, well, that all sounded a little bit contrite. We do have principles, and without sounding contrite, they are ones that I live by, and they are ones that mean a lot to the people here. And it's important that you recognize what they are and actually what that means for the firm itself. Underpinning everything I did in the military and others will have done was always people banged on about integrity. And here I think these 4 things really they're about integrity, but they're about how we deal with ourselves and our clients and how we have integrity around that. So the first one, fiduciary to our clients. That means that whatever we do, we put our clients first. It's pretty simple. If we aren't performing and if we're not doing right by our clients, we don't get paid. That's the commercial reality of that. And those people that are our clients, they're the big corporates, yes, but they're also the pork pie manufacturers up in the Midlands. They're the teachers, they're the local authorities, they're the charities. They're your firemen. We are representing a whole sphere of clients, and we've got to make sure we look after them properly. That's our #1 priority. And that ties all into about how you do that and about being passionate about your performance. What really does that mean? It means, Larry Fink will bang on again about being a student of the market. What does that mean? It means just knowing what's going on around you. It means being aware of the industry that you're working in or choosing to work in, that you've got a commitment to learn, and that you're constantly trying to develop and learn and develop yourself. And again, it's an easy thing to say, and actually somewhere like BlackRock, it's not an undifficult thing to do because the learning opportunities are there for you every day. So that is something that, for myself, I came in with very little financial knowledge. I feel next to a load of guys who are derivative specialists that I know very little again, and your brain hurts most days. But you can learn, and the opportunities are there to learn. So I wouldn't be put off by high barriers. I would just say that if you want to achieve those barriers, then this is a good place to come. The next one about One BlackRock, it's about leveraging the firm, and it's about knowing that whatever the problem is, a solution can be found, and I think that's one of the things that the firm prides itself on. And innovation, again, hand in glove with the technology and the how do you do things smarter, how do you do things quicker, how do you do things in a risk-free way. These are all things that are fundamental to the way the firm works. But again, underpinning all of this is the idea of the concept, but the actual practice of inclusivity and diversity, and being able to be yourself at work. And the veterans in the military, the skill set that we bring and you folks bring should not be underestimated. And it really, someone like BlackRock sees you as a diversifier. You're coming in with a completely different background to anybody who's going to be in the team or on the floor before you. So you are seen as a diverse member of the team. So that's something that I'd really encourage you to think about, and something that you should see as a strength. The next slide it's a bit of a cut through of the organization, but like many asset managers out there, any of the big banks, you've got your client businesses, you've got your investment side, and you've got your analytics, your technology. I can't really do justice to the size of the firm and the specialty areas there, but I think at the Insight Day you'll have the opportunity to ask questions, to meet people who work in all those areas where we can get them. So I'd ask you to have a dig and have a think about what it is that you'd like to do and what you'd like to know more about. And I'll leave it there, because I think the next question, I think we're going to go to the polls and some case studies and a different voice other than my own.
Thanks very much. So we're going to have a poll question now, which means that we would like you guys to engage with us and answer the question that you see on the screen in front of you. How does an asset manager differ from an investment bank? Okay, so interestingly, there we had 63% of you saying an asset manager operates on behalf of its clients, 11% saying investment banks are involved in creating capital and acting as underwriters, and 28% saying asset managers construct fund portfolios to generate performance. So guys, perhaps you'd like to comment on those responses there.
So I think what's key again is drawing out that we're fiduciary to our clients, and the client is at the centre of everything we do. So I think the answer there is that they're all correct in one way or another. But I'd encourage the guys around the table to give their views and draw out some other answers for the team watching.
Yeah, I think one of the main things we want to get across here is looking back at the principles and everything, is the fiduciary aspect that BlackRock holds. One of the first things that you'll come across when you come to the open day or meet the people here is that everything we do is about the client. We don't operate any proprietary trading on our own book. We just look after other people's money, but we do that obviously for their benefit. If it benefits them, it benefits us, and it benefits the firm. So everything we do is about that. So obviously we differ from an investment bank. When you look at the scale of an investment bank, you can look at them in the tens and even hundreds of thousands of employees. In terms of, I think HSBC, something like about 200,000 employees. Even your Goldman Sachs, which is a fairly small, is around 40,000 employees. BlackRock itself, although it manages more than 5.7 trillion, is only 12,000 employees. So we only cover one aspect that investment banks cover. Investment banks will look at all of the other aspects of finance, whether it be mergers and acquisitions and all the other areas. Asset management just forms part of their remit. We focus entirely upon that, and as such, we don't have the proprietary trading. Obviously, we have traders because we have to implement all of our portfolios, all of our strategies, whether that's across bonds or equities or whatever asset class that we're trading. However, we only do that on behalf of our client, which is a major differentiator. So we focus in BlackRock on the asset management side, which is where we look at the principle of focusing on that and obviously being the best in class.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name's Jonathan. We're going to go on some case studies now, so I'll start off with myself. I left the Army in February following my subunit command tour. I actually joined the Army, joining the REME in 1997 as a soldier, and then commissioned into the RTR 2004. During my commission service, I spent time at RD, time at Phase 1 training, and also time in BGHQ. I came to BlackRock on the VET program in February this year, and now find myself in RQA as a risk manager. I found that definitely my military experience has given me absolute direct relevance, and whilst it's clearly a very different context that we operate in, actually I found that the tools, systems and processes are remarkably similar. And so my role is involved in both proactively and reactively managing risk, and essentially it's all about protecting the firm. This has been an absolutely amazing kind of step for me, and very happy to chat about it later on in questions.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Zoe. I actually served in the Royal Engineers for 7 years, and then I left later, in February this year, as a captain. Throughout my time, I spent the majority of it in Germany and Canada as a construction project manager, but I also served as an ops officer and at Harrogate. I joined BlackRock through the internship program this year, and I now work as the client service manager for Middle East and African clients from the institutional business. Much like John said, although context is very different, my job does have many similarities to being a project manager in the military. It's reactive. But essentially, on a day-to-day basis, I project manage and leverage teams and the tools that are available to kind of produce solutions for the clients and their requests. But we can talk about it further later on.
Hi guys, my name's Tom. I commissioned into the Marines in 2008, and then throughout my time did the usual Afghanistan, various other bits around the world, and getting my feet wet. I left the Marines in September last year and was on resettlement of May of last year, so I had quite a long lead-in time to when the actual internship started in February. Having joined in February, I worked in a slightly different team that I do now, but currently work in sales, working with life companies, so big insurance companies like MetLife and Aviva, as well as platforms as well, perhaps kind of like Hargreaves, Lansdowne that you'll be aware of. And just echoing what Zoe and John have spoken about, I think most military people are well prepared to come into this industry. You move around quite a lot in the military, and that means you have to be able to adapt and learn quickly and operate obviously under pressure. And that's a similar kind of environment, although in a slightly different context. So military people are well suited to coming into this industry and into this company.
Hi everyone, Kevin, the Air Force. I spent 17 years in the Air Force, so longer than the 3 preceding people. I was actually on the internship, not the one that's just gone, but the previous one to that. So some of you may have heard me on the last year's webinar. We wanted to get across from all of this that we have people represented here who all have now mostly permanent roles from the internship, but also come from all 3 services and differing backgrounds. So obviously, being the elder statesman, having done 17 years, don't be put off by any age restrictions that you may think that exist out there, or whether you're commissioned or non-commissioned. It really is open to everyone, and I think you will find there's quite a lot of diversity amongst our group in terms of our background, whether it be the force that we've come from or experiences within the forces and the roles that we've served. I was lucky enough to join into the real assets. I started off in ICB, institutional client business, in a COO role. And when we did the internship this year, as there will be for next year, it was for 6 months, as was only for 3 months. So we had a little bit of extra pressure to try and make a name for ourselves. Fortunately, a role came up, and I was offered a place in the real estate investor relations team, which is very close to the investment side in the alternative space. We've now amalgamated with the infrastructure, which means our platform is growing, and it's actually a strategic imperative for the firm. And you can see from all the news around the world, whether it's Donald Trump's $1 trillion investment over 10 years into infrastructure, if that happens, it's a focus across infrastructure investments across most of the Western world, and obviously the growing emerging markets, whether that's in Asia, China, or wherever else. So there's lots of growth aspects to the firm, and none of it is not open to internships. And we're trying our very best to get areas open to you guys to apply for that. So I really want to get them across the thread there, that the principles from the military background do come across, particularly from the fiduciary side. We don't take risks or excessive risks with other people's money and give them the downside and take the upside. It really is about maximizing all of the performance for the clients, which will then serve BlackRock and yourself well. So the principles do align from most of the aspects of your military life, and your backgrounds will stand you in good stead once you come into BlackRock. And I think that was just something I always wanted to stress about that varied background, and it really is open, and don't let it put you off. Whatever your background is, please do take a good close look at the firm and the internship and do apply.
Thanks very much, Kev. I'm just going to interject here with a question, which I think is probably quite relevant. Somebody has asked how rank equates to roles within BlackRock. So perhaps you've come some way answering that in what you've just said, but perhaps you could just say something about that?
Yeah, I'll take that, Lisa. Hi, it's Will Jones here. I work in the institutional client business here at BlackRock. I think it's quite a difficult question, and it's not necessarily set in stone when you come into the company. Clearly, Kev and John have come in as VPs, as vice presidents, and the rest of us have come in as an associate. But it really depends on the role, who you're applying for, how technical that role is, and what you've done before. So hugely dependent.
Thank you. That's helpful. But Kev's message that, you know, not to think too much about rank, but more about what you bring to the party and how your values are aligned with the organisation.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say, and most people, that you're not, whatever rank you're leaving, you're bringing those qualities. However, if you were, are really high up in whatever force, you'll probably have to, in terms of rank or status, have to take a step down. That's probably, you're going into an area where you are, you're not the expert anymore. Somebody else is. They've got to realise the qualities that you have, and that's what the internship gives. It gives them a chance to see you, de-risk you, and give you those opportunities to go for those more senior roles. And what we tend to find is people that do come in, there's examples where people tend to climb the ladder a little bit quicker because they've got all that expertise, but you do have to prove yourself first. And it's not to say, talking about the taboo subject of money, that you might not get, you might be on a lower status necessarily, but you might actually be on more pay than you were in the Air Force or the military. So who knows? But I think you can only come to an organisation and take the experience that's on offer. And a lot of the times, some of the positions might not be set in stone. I think quite a few people here, including myself, took positions where there was not necessarily extra headcount coming for that year, but people left within that year. And that's not something that the business can foresee necessarily. There is a natural turnover. The people move on to different companies. There's some restructure and reorganization where roles come up. And obviously, those roles will be vary in terms of rank or grade. I was lucky in the fact there was quite a bit of restructuring going on with the focus on the real assets business. And actually, my age and maturity or immaturity, depending on who you speak to, was one of the reasons, not necessarily my financial background, because obviously I didn't have any, but the fact is there was quite a lot of project management and some man management issues that needed to work through. Therefore, somebody coming off a graduate scheme probably didn't have the life experience to do it, and therefore that went in my favour. And it was the skills that I brought from the man management side that actually gave me the opportunity to do the role, but also then get me the opportunity to basically pitch that at the VP level. So it's all about what you can bring and the opportunities that are there. Undoubtedly, there will be people that will come in and will get some good grades. So it's open to you really, and whatever's open at the firm at the time.
I think just to echo that really, which is to say that internal mobility is something that, again, is central to keeping the firm moving and to keep people's careers feeling fresh. So whether that's an intern that comes in and realizes that the role that they thought was the plum role to be an intern wasn't actually the one that suits them, and they want to move teams, business areas at the end of that internship or even during that internship. That's something that happens. And Kev, for example, was on the intern program but left halfway through the intern program because he'd already found the job. So these things happen, and the firm's got really, and part of running the intern program is to give people the exposure and the experience, not necessarily to work out that this is what they're going to do for the rest of their life, but to also be able to say, actually, I've tried it and I didn't like it. That's not necessarily what we should be espousing to, but if that's the decision that people are able to make on the back of it, and we're able to help people align themselves with what they want to do next and how they want to build the next 20 years of their life, then I think that's something that we've got to try and do. Will, sorry, you were going to say something.
I think Kev hit on a really good point, but then I just want to kind of emphasize it, is that if you come in at a certain level, there's nothing to say you have to serve your time at that level. And I think coming from the military, we're very used to having to go through the natural stages or levels of progression and doing the right course to get to the next stage. There's nothing to say that if you've got a bit more experience and you come in at a slightly lower level initially, that you won't progress much quicker than everyone else or be at this position you want to be at in 3 or 4 years, as opposed to kind of 8 or 9 years.
It's also probably worth saying that actually if you do come in at higher levels, it does actually reduce your opportunity for internal mobility, because if you come in at some of the lower levels, you have more opportunity. Just as in with the military, there's more roles available, whether that's in London or whether it's globally or whether it's moving departments. So if you are not necessarily dead set on a certain career within the financial services, and if you've never done it before, why would you know? So it does give you more opportunity to then move around and go, actually, this area looks better. And so the internship gives you that opportunity to get your foot in the door, but then also we stress this when guys come in first, that it's still a positive for you if you go away thinking this is not an industry for you after the internship. If it's something that is not aligned with you or doesn't fit, or even if it's not for your circumstances, it gives you the opportunity to look at it, gives us the opportunity to look at you, and it works both ways. Even if the company says we like you, you might say you don't like the company, you don't like the industry. It's all open to that. It's a two-way thing, and it's for you to come and have a look at not just the company but the industry as a whole. And if you've never had much experience of it, then you don't necessarily know what you're letting yourself in for. So it's and also the opportunities that are in here. You might be dead set on a certain career, but then get here and then want to spend a week with a different team or orchestrate moving into a certain area. Or as Joe's done, who started off in legal and compliance, he moved after 18 months to 2 years with internal mobility, which is stressed. That they encourage that, so you can use it as a stepping stone. So it's not a case of you didn't get the area that you're really interested in to begin with, but then you can move on. So use it as an opportunity to really look to your 5 to 10 year goals rather than just your short-term goals.
And there's an area as well that we're missing out here, and Stuart's up in Edinburgh, and hopefully not falling asleep at the sound of our own voices. But Stuart, you came in as a lateral hire. People should feel that there's that opportunity as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a case of opportunity and networking effectively, especially in Edinburgh. It's a bit more closed off than London in terms of leveraging those opportunities with ex-military, but the scene has grown in terms of the vet networks with the respective firms, and I was lucky to meet a member of the talent acquisition area in HR at a networking event in Edinburgh, and then from there managed to apply for a direct role and went through the normal interview process any member of the public would go through.
Yeah, okay, so now we're going to move on to a second poll about, so what roles could service leaders do within asset management? So you've got 4 options there: relationship management and sales, risk management, client service management, or technology operations. So the results there, we had 56% of you thinking relationship management and sales, 17% risk management, another 17% client service management, and 11% technology operations. So what do you guys make of those results? So 56, 17, 17, and 11.
Hi, Lisa. I'll take that one. It's Will Webber here. I work in the institutional client business as well. And sat around the table here, we all working in a variety of different business areas. We've got people that work in client business and relationship management, client service support, capital markets, alternative investments, risk and quantitative analysis, investment strategy and design as well. So I think to sort of answer that question is, there's so many different areas of the business where the experience and skills that we've developed in our previous careers in the military can be effectively applied across the business. I think it's quite easy sometimes when you're looking from an outside perspective to think that there's certain areas that are just categorically not accessible. I think something that I would probably have thought is I wouldn't be able to do would be going to capital markets, and there was guys that we had on the intern program that did work in capital markets. So you should never think there isn't anywhere in the business that isn't accessible to you.
I think also to add to that, as well, is just to steer away from perhaps stereotypes, not about where you can't go, but that there is only certain types of roles that if you're ex-military, then therefore you, excluding Tom clearly, that you've got to be good at sales or you've got to be good at relationship management. There is a whole variety of places where our skills set in. So I just encourage people just to have a a wider and as broader think about what they want to do and where they want to do it.
So, sorry, this screen probably reinforces what you've just said, i.e. that people should not rule out any area of the business, and indeed, you know, look to approach any area that they find interesting. So moving swiftly onwards to our third and final poll, what attributes do you think values most in service leavers? I'll just give you a few moments to answer that question. So what do you think BlackRock is mainly looking for when they're looking to hire service leavers? Okay, well, I have to say that 100% of people voted for a well-rounded character with life experience.
Well, Lisa, I'm happy to say that 100% of you guys are right. So, you know, we joined this organisation with a lot of incredibly bright people who are incredibly highly qualified, and whilst it's really awesome if you guys can embark on any kind of financial services qualification, or if you do have any experience, essentially what BlackRock are really looking for in ex-military personnel is really that well-rounded character with life experience. And I think all those around this table would agree that, you know, coming into an organisation with that additional level of experience, albeit in a different context, you just bring a different dimension. BlackRock is all about diversity, and this is one element of diversity that we bring, and it's all about, you know, being on that one page, one BlackRock, and delivering the objective together. So, you know, it's well-rounded character.
Hi, Lisa. I think one of the main things you just need to pull out of tonight is the fact that certainly from my own perspective, I feel that a lot of the principles that BlackRock espouses are, particularly from its fiduciary aspects, are aligned to military life. And I think one of the reasons I found it quite an easy transition, and the others can speak to this, has been because of that and the friendly atmosphere that actually underpins when you come into the building. Everyone's happy to help out. There's a very collegiate atmosphere, and I think it's the principles from the company itself which certainly made it a lot easier for myself to transition whilst doing the internship. But also the fact that I think from some of the other internships, and it might be in my own perception when I was doing the rounds, is that I tended to find that there were pockets of military in other institutions that were stereotyped into certain roles, and I haven't found that here. And I think because maybe that the internship itself is relatively young, relatively new, that it doesn't have that history, and there is a lot more diversity in the areas that the military guys are in here at BlackRock than certainly I've seen at other places. And I just wanted to stress that because I think it's one of the main. If I'd have gone to some other institutions, I'm not necessarily sure that I'd have had such a good time, but I can certainly vouch for BlackRock.
Okay. Shall I leave this slide up there for people to take these details down? But did someone want to just talk through this before we move on to the Q&A?
Yeah, well, just to talk through the process, obviously from today, and you know, if you're speaking to your colleagues that are out there, there's no. We have an open day coming up on the 6th of October here in London, and then the following one on the 25th in Edinburgh. That's just, you know, you don't have to attend both. You don't have to attend either. But if you want to come, then we're delighted to have you and give you obviously face-to-face networking and give you more opportunities to see people, have a chat, learn more about the business. It's not a prerequisite that you must have either seen this webinar or had attended either of the days, and you can attend both if you like, if you're going between the two cities. But you know, to apply for the internship if you're interested. The more and more research you do, and obviously the other programs that are out there, then the better informed you'll be, and obviously from an interview perspective, the better that will be too. So on dates wise, the main focus for ourselves at the moment is getting ready for greeting you guys on the 6th of October, and then up in Edinburgh on the 25th. After that, on the 6th of October, our internship applications officially open, but we've already had some through now, and we're more than welcome to accept them now. And then that'll close at the end of October before then notifying the people that we're going to go to first round interviews, which will be completed by ourselves here in the Vets Network. So you'll be vetted by a vet here at BlackRock. So I wouldn't worry too much about your CV. The guys here will be able to decipher everything and know what you've done. And so you can try and civilianize it, but if you haven't got the, you're a little bit wary of doing that, or you just want to keep it in the military style, then more than happy to accept those in due course. After that, we'll invite people back to spend some time with hiring managers, about like the 3rd week in November, and they will make the decisions on who they want to be in their business areas. We should be able to tell you by early December, so it'll be all out the way by Christmas before there's a month of just vetting in terms of your qualifications, your background, all that sort of stuff. It usually takes about a month before starting in early February.
So what I'd like to add as well, and around the October date is, whilst it's not a showstopper if you don't turn up, it's a fantastic opportunity to come and get a better feel for the culture of the firm versus that of others. It's a great opportunity to come and meet people who work in the building. We'll be making an effort to get people down from people who've hired vets in the past, people who are looking to hire vets in the intern program, and people who can just come down and over lunch, mill around, do some networking, and give you a better insight into what they do on a day-to-day basis to help alleviate some of those myths, get rid of those myths rather, alleviate any fears, and really just put a human face to what we're trying to achieve here at BlackRock. What I'd also say is, if you're right at the start of your process and you've still got 12 months to go, come and have those conversations, come and ask the silly questions or the questions that you think might be silly. Come and make contacts at this point rather than waiting 9 months down the line, 12 months down the line. As Stuart can attest to, there'll be lateral opportunities might well come up as well as the intern program. Yes, this kicks off the intern program, but you should really just see it as whatever stage you are at now in your transition to leaving the gates, that this is just one more step on there. So regardless, I'll just get yourselves down.
Great, okay. Well, we'll just move into some questions then, because some of them relate to the program specifically. I think some you kind of answered already in terms of a lot of people asking about will not attending the Insight Day impact their application, but you guys have said it doesn't matter if you can't attend the Insight Day. The most important thing is to do your research and apply. Other people asking about other opportunities for lateral hires or direct hires outside of the program. So perhaps I know you touched on it a little bit already, and obviously Stuart testament to that, but perhaps a little bit more on that would be useful.
Yeah, hi, it's Gary here. So I was a lateral hire. I started in January. So I'm an ex-ranker. So I commissioned into the education branch from the REME, and I did a bit of time at another company before I joined here. But the lateral hire process is quite intense. I went through about 4 or 5 different interview processes. So telephone interview with HR, telephone interview with my line manager, face-to-face interview with my line manager, and then a face-to-face interview with my line manager plus 2 senior execs from the States. All in all, it took about 3 to 4 months. But I'm not a technologist, but I work as in a developer, but I work in the technology group here, Aladdin Product Group, as a learning specialist. So there are lots of diverse roles out there as a lateral hire that you could apply for, and even in the technology space, you don't have to be a technologist. You can be an analyst, business analyst. So if you were an associate or a VP, looking after the operational side of how the technology runs.
Great, thank you. Other question that we've had is about the size of the intake. So do you have an idea as to how many people you might be able to be taking on this time?
So it's not a fixed number. Typically what we have looked at is trying to keep the cohort as a smallish cohort. So we're talking between 6 and 9 in London. The opportunity, if the right people are there, for the businesses to fund that. So from a funding perspective, we have a certain number that we can bring in. This year, the product, so to speak, was impressive enough, and the pipeline of people coming through the process has been impressive enough that a number of the businesses decided to self-fund on top of that central funding, which was very good. But also the other side of that is, if the bar isn't met, we don't have to take that number of people. It's a competitive marketplace, so that is the reality. That's in London, and then up in Edinburgh, again, we're going to be working at this. So we had a pilot stage last year, and this will be the first year that there'll be a formal intern program running in Edinburgh, which is something we are hugely proud of having achieved. That again will be a small core cohort. Numbers again will be TBC, but there will be an opening, and there will be the opportunities for the right people if they can get there.
Great. Okay. Couple of do you have the timings for the open day at the moment?
They're still being worked out to looking at the availability of the individuals that we want to get. However, we're looking probably around sort of arriving 10 to 10:30, and then staying all the way through networking drinks after sort of working hours till 6:30, 7 o'clock. So it should give people time to get into London, on a train well before sort of 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. So that shouldn't be an issue. And as I commute from outside of London, you shouldn't have a problem. So those details we'll put out there as soon as we get them confirmed. But I would work on the fact of getting into sort of BlackRock, which is right in the centre of the city, just off sort of Bank or Moorgate, probably around sort of the 10 o'clock time. So if you have to come down the night before, then obviously plan on doing that.
What I was going to say about the open day as well is be happy to give us your feedback there on the day as well. If you think it's a good day at the end of the day, let us know. If there's things we can improve next year, again, we'll welcome that feedback. Again, if anybody who was here at the open day last year, we're changing and tweaking the format. So hopefully it's a really enjoyable day, and it will keep moving, and it won't be. Hopefully we differentiate ourselves from the market.
Great. Okay. A question about the internship and how much choice did those of you who've done the internship, how much choice did you have in what area you got accepted into?
Hi Lisa, it's Will here. Clearly there's a predetermined number of businesses that will have headcount for this time round, but there'll be plenty of options within that. It's not going to be across the institutional client business. It's not just going to be retail. It'll be from across the BlackRock as a whole. But I think in terms of if you get to the stage where your CV's been looked at and you pass the first phone interviews, we will put out there some stuff about what kind of businesses are looking and where your preferences would lie. So it's not completely down to you at the end of the day, but you will be given a choice, and you will be able to align your kind of preferences with where you think your strengths lie.
And again, something to add to that is that there has been a predominance of sort of veterans going into certain parts of the business, and that has really seeded the program. What we're really trying to do now is again, to help build that diversity, is that we have people from all different backgrounds from the forces coming into the building and moving into all types of different businesses and being able to grow their careers from that. So again, back to the beginning, lots of businesses will put their names in the hat because they want the product, and from the intern or potential intern's perspective, be open to opportunity. That's what I would say.
I'll just add one more bit onto that, in so much as I started off in the legal and compliance department on the internship and then stepped across into RQA. So the point that I wanted to make really is that whilst people may have certain desires to go into a certain area, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's where you would end up. So there's definitely potential for internal mobility. So I wouldn't be too hung up on that kind of initial area.
Okay, that's useful, thank you. Other questions we've been having relate to preparation and things like that, and perhaps use of learning credits. Would you recommend people studying for any qualifications, that kind of thing? Also, what is there any kind of top tips that you would give people to for sources for them to expand their knowledge and things like that, to perhaps allow them to understand how to direct their application better?
Hi there, Lisa. It's Will Webber. I'll take that question. So before I applied for the internship, I studied for the IMC, which is the Investment Management Certificate. I only actually managed to complete the first unit before I joined BlackRock. But it is very useful in giving you a good sort of background understanding of the wider industry. But also, I think when you're sat there opposite somebody in an interview, it does show a lot of intent that's really that you want to do, and you're not just sort of applying on a whim. And you've put a lot of thought into, I want to work in asset management, or I want to work in financial services. And you're using, essentially, it could be your own money or the enhanced learning credits to do that. And in terms of sort of like trying to improve your knowledge as well, a lot of the firms like BlackRock, for example, has the BlackRock Insights, which is an app you can get on your mobile phone, and that's sort of updated on a weekly basis. And there's loads of really useful bits that come out on there. I think every Sunday or every Monday, Richard Turnhill writes a piece, very short piece, just talking about what's been going on in the markets, what are the themes at the moment, and that's the sort of level that you should know. I think coming into the interviews, just having a sort of like a very broad macro idea of what's going on.
Tommy, I'll just add that, and obviously you've got the Financial Times on Mondays. They do an asset management sort of pull out, which is specific to obviously our industry. So that will give you lots of highlights of what's going on around regulation, movements, personnel, etc. So that's a really good source. But just being able to be comfortable with talking through what's going on in the market and being able to explain that logically to somebody is going to be sort of crucial, because again, that demonstrates your interest and knowledge of what's going on externally, and obviously how BlackRock then fits into that and then delivers to its clients.
I'd say lastly, probably use your networks and use people that that are in the industry to find out as much as you can. Enhance your CV. Think about what differentiates you and what your real motivation is for going into finance. And by all means, use the VET network, or use us. Email the VET alias, and I'm sure that someone will be more than willing to have a sit down and have a coffee with you. And if you're lucky, that might even be Kev.
Will was very lucky. But I just want to say on the education side of things, and it's not a person that has done the IMC will get an internship or anything else like that. I think I personally wouldn't want to see just somebody regurgitate things. I'd like you to take a view on things. So even if you're taking a view based upon not the full information, but you can explain why you got to that point. I'd looking at process and that you're actually thinking about it rather than just regurgitating things in an interview or anything else. So if you can come out with some coherent methodology of why you think something, and what, even if you know your own knowledge gaps and say, but I don't know this, and we can investigate this more. For me, that's far more powerful than saying you've got an IMC or anything else. Yes, it's nice if you can get it. I wouldn't necessarily rush out and want everyone to go out and get it, but it is, you'd have to do it in due course anyway as an industry standard, effectively, to do certain roles. So, but I'd like to see some sort of thought behind what you're thinking and what you're saying. What does it mean, and understanding of it, and the principles that are involved, and the relationships with other things, and which assets go up if the others go down, and the reasons why this, that, and the other. And that is far more powerful in an interview, to see that you're thinking about things and how you process information than just saying I've got the IMC or anything else. Thanks very much. That's really useful. I think we've just got time for one more question, which is not a lengthy question, but perhaps we'll end the session on a good note, which is perhaps to talk about the success rate of people securing a full-time role after having done the internship.
That's a good question, and a very fair one. So we've had 24 interns come through in the last 3 years. Up until this year, that was probably around a 55% conversion rate on the back of it. And again, that's making sure it's very clear there is no obligation. And what that conversion rate also shows or says is that we have been bringing the right people in. And what it also says is that they haven't always gone into the roles in which they're interning. They've made the most of the opportunities when they got in the building and going into taking advantage of the internal mobility. The next piece really to flag is that as the pipeline has grown stronger and we've refined the program itself, you look at this year where, top of my head, there's 8 interns came into the London office. All 8 are still in are all still in, and I think 7 from 8 have got permanent roles, and 1 is on a long-term contract. So it is good. It is what you make of it. It is also, I think, as Kev and Will both alluded to, the businesses don't know when headcount exactly is going to be available. What we can give you is the opportunity in that 6 months is to take the opportunity there in front of you to network, to build connections, to demonstrate your abilities, and then transfer into a job. But that's the onus really is upon the vet when they're in the building to demonstrate.
Yeah, I think that's very fair, and I think those recent statistics you gave should be very encouraging for people. So just as a final comment, I would perhaps ask, if people have specific questions that they'd like to ask and they're unable to come along to your open day, is it all right if they email you on that vet@blackrock.com email address?
Yes, of course it is.
Okay, so anyone out there who's got a specific question, who's unable to go along to one of the open days in order to talk to people face to face, you're very welcome to email the guys to get your question answered. Otherwise, it just remains for me to thank you all for your time today. I think it's absolutely fantastic. We've had so many of you, all with, as Kev said, different backgrounds from all 3 services, and I think that just shows the breadth of talent that's out there, and that BlackRock obviously recognises that. So thank you very much for your time today. All the details to sign up for both those open days are on our website, also that of the CTP and of White Ensign Association. Equally, the OA Scotland will be promoting the Edinburgh workshop. If none of you has any final comments, it just leaves for me to wrap up. So did anyone have anything further?
Lisa, I just got one thing to say. Whilst we are unashamedly promoting BlackRock, in that I'm sure everyone out there is doing the rounds and looking at all the other internship programs, but I think you'll go a long way to find anything that's going to last for 6 months that's paid, in terms of what's going on in London at the moment. So I think that's another one that BlackRock is investing in, the Veterans Network, and really appreciates the diversity, is putting a lot of resources into this. Whilst others around us are probably shrinking from that a little bit. So I'd probably just stress that it's probably one, I think, the best one that's out there at the moment.
Super. Well, thanks very much, and thanks to everyone who's joined us this evening. I hope you found it a valuable session, and good luck in your applications.